Hey
Hello.
everybody, have you ever welcome to the Hangout. Have you ever joined a conversation right in the middle of it and you have no idea what the people are talking about? Well, that's about to happen to you right now. So, Lauren, we were talking you were talking about climate change and I just had the thought because you mentioned like how you can even if you're skeptical of the science, you can just look at how weather patterns have changed and draw the conclusion that something is going on. I, I have a friend who's also a subscriber to my YouTube channel named Harold, who lives up in New England in Vermont,
hmm
and he tells me firsthand about the effect it's had over the last few years on the maple syrup industry. That people who make their living harvesting maple syrup, or harvesting the raw materials that they make maple syrup from, have had a huge impact to their business because
Oh,
the you
now the
know
climate's gone too far. Now when they're hitting
yeah,
us,
we have to do something about it.
You can
here.
believe Bernie Sanders is going to be selling that.
Yeah, well, I mean,
I mean,
whatever gets.
that's right in his wheelhouse, man. Maple syrup, hey.
Yeah, that's his neck of the woods. He's got to look out for his local interests. You know.
And I got to look out for my pancakes for crying out loud.
No. We'll always have log cabin, I guess. I mean,
Oh God,
there's no
please.
there's nothing anywhere close. No actual maple syrup has ever been within 100 miles of that stuff. So it doesn't stop me from enjoying it.
Yeah.
So how is everybody? I bitched a little bit about the cold and the snow around here, but how is everybody else doing?
Well, not doing that badly at all, really.
Warm and toasty over here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, well you said you were in Florida, right,
Oh
Brett?
yeah, it's like
Yeah.
60 right now, maybe. A nice
You.
brisk 60. Ugh.
I just don't know.
Oh, but here in Oregon, it's clear but cold. So it's well, not cold like you guys have cold, but like 32 degrees or so. So freezing, just.
Yeah.
Well,
I
at
think
this
we're
point, I would take that.
yeah, I think we're in the teens somewhere. I haven't the I don't know if any of you guys use the weather app or the weather widget in Windows 7, but they quit supporting it, which really was kind of disappointing to me. I understand their reasoning because apparently it's vulnerable to being hacked, but it
Mhm.
was always nice to be able to look at it's 17 degrees outside, and now I've got to go downstairs to my I've got actually a little weather station in the kitchen which has a remote sensor outside, and I mean that gives me the temperature what it is right here, which is great. But I mean, I don't know. I suppose I could take the weather station up here. It still has enough range to to deal with that. But I don't
Yeah.
know. I'm spoiled. What can I tell you?
I'm spoiled about the weather too. Actually, the last couple of days it's been freezing around here, but now today it's actually relatively nice out. I haven't paid much attention to the temperature today, but I just Googled the weather for my area, and it's actually like in the high 30s right now. So all that snow we got is rapidly melting, which is which is very good news for me because I live far enough away from the river that I don't care.
Hmm.
But yeah, the snow has been. I'm just not, I'm such a baby when it comes to snow, especially now that I work from home. I don't really even have to go out in it. I don't have to drive in it. I don't have to do anything, and I still bitch and complain about it. I think it's just in my blood. I think that's all. I just bitch and complain about the weather because
Yeah.
it's just what I do.
I don't know. I've when I wasn't living in Cleveland, I was living in North suburban Chicago, and their winters are at least as harsh as the Cleveland winters are on occasion. And I wasn't living there. I was living in upstate New York, and their winters were notable. So I don't. I'm used to it. Eventually, I suppose I'll get tired of it enough to want to get away from it. But I'm 64, and it hasn't happened yet.
I occasionally Ashley and I will sort of like bat the idea back and forth of maybe we should move somewhere else, and I don't think it's ever going to happen. I think that I'm too married to this area, and what else would I complain about?
I thought you were married to Ashley.
I, actually, Maryland's marriage laws are very liberal. You can be married both to another person and also to a geographical region, so it's pretty great.
Very progressive.
Yeah, we are. We're quite progressive here in Maryland.
Yeah. Never underestimate the quality of home, I think.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's funny. We were talking about living in Maryland versus living somewhere else yesterday because Ashley had mentioned if we found the perfect house, but it was in West Virginia as opposed to Maryland, would I want to move there? And my instinctive response was no. Like even though I love West Virginia to visit, I'm not someone who makes fun of West Virginia because West Virginia jokes in my part of the country are like very common. Everybody makes fun of West Virginia. Uh, but it's a beautiful place to visit. It has wonderful, landscapes and the woods. I love the woods, and West Virginia is nothing but woods. But I mean, when I make fun of it, I call West Virginia like it's the Somalia of the eastern United States. Like there's so little government there compared to Maryland that it's kind of shocking. And I mean, like you get 5 miles outside of a major town, and it's like you might as well be 100 miles. Like there's just nothing there outside of the major settlements. I feel like that's the right word to use, the major settlements.
Just deliverance.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and I just don't want to live there. Like I want to live in a place where there's yeah, we pay more taxes, but we also have roads and schools and stuff. Like I think those things are nice.
Wild West Virginia.
Roads and schools are good.
Yeah, right? Who
Yeah.
doesn't want roads and schools?
I spent a couple of months in Parkersburg, West Virginia. I was working for Schlumberger Well Services. This is 40 years ago plus, and I think it was my last honest-to-God summer job while I was still going to school. And I mean, Parkersburg was nice. I mean, it was civilized, plus or minus, but yeah, I mean, you don't have to go very far out of Parkersburg to get real rural real fast.
Yeah, that's how it is pretty much everywhere. I know around here, where I live in Maryland is like literally 5 miles from the Potomac River, and on the other side of that is West Virginia, and that's where I went to college. Like my university is Shepherd University, which is just a stone's throw across the river in West Virginia, and the town, Shepherdstown, that's right on the edge of the campus, is just a beautiful little town. It's one of the nicest towns in this area, no matter what state you're talking about. It's just a really affluent, lots of culture, lots of local businesses, little independent movie theater. I mean, it's a really, really nice place. And then, you drive 10 minutes in any direction into West Virginia, and you're just nowhere. It's kind of amazing. I mean, there are parts of Maryland that are a little bit like that, but I don't know. There's something maybe it's just my Marylander prejudice or something, but it feels like you get into West Virginia and it's like, oh shit, there's like nobody here. If I break down, nobody's ever gonna find me.
Mm. Can you get a cell signal?
Yeah. Well, most places. I mean, I've gone places in West Virginia before where there's not great cell reception. I mean, I don't know. It would be great for a serial killer if you're patient enough. You just kind of hang out and just wait for people to drive by. You might only get 1 or 2 a year, but I mean, you'll get away with it.
And we see where
Hang on a second, let me take notes.
Well, you can always have a phone that uses Wi-Fi. That way, you'll have a cell signal as long as you have Wi-Fi and/or a cell tower nearby.
Yeah.
Yeah. The ultimate, if all else fails, is you get yourself an Iridium phone, a satellite phone. But those things are rare as hen's teeth, and they're expensive as all get out.
At least you wouldn't have to worry about somebody in West Virginia stealing that from you, because they probably wouldn't know what one was. I'm just kidding. Come on. I'm just kidding.
A cell phone is one thing, but a satellite phone, it's you don't see them coming and going. You don't. I don't think you do anyway.
Somebody.
Well, satellite phone, you got to pay for service, so there's that.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody. I once referred to the way a cell phone works as though it were a satellite phone, and somebody very quickly corrected me on that. I said, I think I was picking up where Louis C.K. left off, because Louis C.K. has a great bit from his stand-up from a few years ago about, you know, how when people complain about their cell phones, how they're being so impatient because, like, this, you know, it's going to space. Can you give it a chance to come back from space before you complain about it? Technically, it's not going to space; it's going to a cell tower. But, you know, I love the fact that I have viewers of my videos who will instantly correct me on the slightest technical thing I get wrong. Oh, actually, it's not going to a satellite. That would be a satellite phone. It's going to a cell tower. Okay.
No, but it goes it may in some cases go from the tower to space. So, you know.
Right. So so technically, I was right, is what you're saying.
Under some circumstances, yeah. I mean, I haven't.
Yeah, technically you could be right if the person lives in Fiji.
Yeah. So there is some sense in which I was not entirely wrong. That's good to know.
Just hold on to that.
Yeah, exactly. I wasn't wrong after all. Sort of. Yeah. So is anybody... yeah, go ahead.
You mentioned independent theaters.
Yeah.
I mean, I imagine, you know, being that they're not dependent on like Cinemark or Regal or whoever, do you find that you see stuff there that you might not otherwise see? I mean, because I'm surrounded with that. I think we could probably count the number of independent theaters in Cleveland on the 5 fingers of one hand. And in fact, I mentioned to you we actually saw a digital print of Lawrence of Arabia at one of them the other day, and it was just absolutely fabulous. And I was wondering, you know, do you benefit from that, or is it just that, you know, they sort of get the standard fare, or what do they get?
Well, yeah, we definitely benefit from it. I haven't benefited from it personally lately because I've been too lazy to actually go. But the independent theater in Shepherdstown, it's really nice. It's one screen, you know, and it's just they show maybe 2 or 3 movies at a time, just at different times of the day, and it's stuff that you just, for the most part, you can't see anywhere else around here. You know, I mean, I live close enough to D.C. and Baltimore that I could go down there or over there in the case of Baltimore and see, you know, maybe not quite as wide release stuff that I couldn't see in Hagerstown, but in this immediate area, the theater in Shepherdstown, they show, you know, documentaries and independent films and art films that just don't get shown in the other places around here. I mean, there are movie theaters all around this area. They're big multiplexes, but they're all just showing the wide release stuff. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, it's really nice. That's where I saw what did I see? Well, a couple years ago when Steven Soderbergh released those movies that they would get like sort of a very limited theatrical release, but they would also be released on video on demand like the next day or something like that. He did a really great film about, I guess, 7 or 8 years ago now. It's been a while, called Bubble, that I saw at the theater in Shepherdstown. That was really awesome. That never played anywhere around here outside of like DC or Baltimore, and they show stuff like that all the time. So it's definitely a major benefit.
Was Bubble the one about the people working in the factory?
Yeah.
And there was a murder. Yeah. That was pretty good.
Did you see that? Yeah.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite movies from that year. I really liked that movie.
Yeah.
I liked the guy who played I think he actually is a detective, or he's like a retired detective. The guy who played the detective in that movie, because it actually seemed like realistic, you know.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't like, he didn't go in and like hit anybody in the head with a phone book or you know.
And then the young kid, the protagonist, I think he was just a local kid. He wasn't an actor, but I thought he did a pretty good job too.
Yeah, I think they all did a pretty good job, considering. I think. I don't know if any of them were professional actors actually, or at least they weren't like super experienced, you know.
Right.
But yeah, they did a really good job. Somebody, a great director who I can never remember who it is now, but I think it was. I always assumed that it was Truffaut, although it may not have been Truffaut because I don't remember specifically. But he said that everybody has at least one great performance in them, and that is as themselves. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but when you watch a movie like Bubble, where it's it's inexperienced actors giving really good performances, you sort of think like, yeah,
maybe he's right.
yeah, yeah. Well,
Bubble. I heard Bubba at first.
oh, Bubble, yeah. I always think about what Jack Lemmon said that James Cagney told him as far as acting advice, and I still think it. And I was a theater minor in college, and I took a couple of acting classes, but I still think the best acting advice I've ever heard is what Jack Lemmon says that James Cagney said to him, which is you learn your lines, you find your mark, you plant your feet, and you say your lines, but you mean them. And that's like the best acting advice I've ever heard. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. Just say what you're supposed to say, but mean it.
I heard something similar. I think it was Brando commenting on something that James Dean said. He said, well, if you're lighting a cigarette, you're lighting the cigarette. You're not pretending to light it or making a big deal of it. You're just doing that, And I would throw in the word authentically, take the action for what it is.
Yeah, yeah. Did you ever hear the story? Did anybody ever hear the story of? I think it was James Dean was doing a. I don't think it was a movie. I think it was something on TV in the early '50s, before he was James Dean, before he became a huge star and then was killed in a car accident. He was doing it with Vincent Price, and Vincent Price was very much like an old school theatrical actor. He didn't really get into the whole method acting thing, and him and James Dean had to do a scene where James Dean threw Vincent Price down in a chair. And they get to this point in the scene, and James Dean grabs a hold of him and throws him really forcefully down in the chair. And Vincent Price gets up and yells for them to cut the scene. And he gets up in James Dean's face and he says, "You methods! It's acting. You're not supposed to actually throw me in the chair. You're supposed to pretend to throw me in the chair."
Yeah, but if he pretends to throw him in the chair, it's going to look like he's pretending.
Right.
I'm reminded Harrison Ford in Air Force One. I remember seeing a behind the scenes of him in that, and he was really encouraging. Who was the antagonist in that one? I can't remember.
Gary Oldman was the main
Gary
guy.
Oldman, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And he was saying, really get into it. They wanted it. They wanted to sell it. They wanted to make sure it had credibility.
Absolutely. I think that Willem Dafoe and Tobey Maguire tell the same story about doing Spider-Man. Like Willem Dafoe was like, "Hit me, hit me, hit me,"
Yeah.
It's like, are you
I
sure?
will worry about the bruises later.
Yeah, yeah, I can believe that because Willem Dafoe is kind of nuts. He's like one of my favorite actors, and every time I see him in anything, I'm like, God, you're so nuts.
When I see him as the Green Goblin, and I have to wonder, is it that far a journey from Willem Dafoe to this guy in green?
No, it can't possibly be that far. That's funny. I was just thinking of that the other day too. I was thinking about the scene in Spider-Man, in the first Spider-Man movie, when James Franco comes into the mansion and nobody else is around, but he hears his father cackling evilly somewhere upstairs. He just walks into this house and all he hears is ah! And he looks up and he goes, "Dad?" It's like, that's the reaction I would have. That sounds like Dad cackling evilly upstairs. Wonder if he's okay. I don't know. I think what they should do with Spider-Man, now that Marvel Studios has sort of gotten him on loan from Sony, is to find some way to bring Willem Dafoe back into it. I don't care if it doesn't make any sense or not. They should just bring him back in and say, okay, he's back now.
Oh, Oscorp has come up with the latest thing, man. Reincarnation.
Yeah. You can reincarnate different versions of characters from different film series. It'll be great. I would do that anyway. I mean, if I were in charge of like a major film, like I always say, if I were in charge of Star Trek, I would do a Star Trek show or a Star Trek movie where it was completely unclear what universe it took place in, and just let let the Trekkies fight about it, you know. Like, is this like the Abrams version or is this like the original version? I don't know. You know, don't even just let people. I don't know. And do things that couldn't possibly coexist in both universes. You know, like sometimes Vulcan's there, sometimes it's not.
Well, or worse yet, you could have Spock start out with a beard and then shave it for some odd reason.
That would be awesome. That's what they should do in the first scene of the next movie. They just show Spock like with the beard, and Kirk be like, "What's up with that beard, man?" He's like, "Should I shave
it? Was
it?
a good look.
Weird. Yeah. Should I shave the beard? I guess it's weird. I'm sorry. I'll shave it. Yeah.
Where's the logic
I say
in
keep the
wearing a
beard.
beard?
Yeah. Keep the beard. They should do a Star Trek movie where they all have beards, and there's no explanation why. They don't reference it at all.
Kirk with a beard. That would take some getting used to.
I think Uhura with a beard is a little more.
Yes, Uhura should have a beard too. That would be perfect.
And she has the
Nobody should say shit about it.
Better yet, Uhura with some cleavage.
And the cleavage has a beard.
I think they've shown admirable restraint in the new Star Trek movies with how they've dressed Uhura, because they have this gorgeous actress playing her, and I mean, except for that one scene in the first movie where she takes her top off, they haven't really exploited her as a sex object very much. I can imagine there are like studio executives going, "Why aren't we showing her with more skin?" And they haven't really done that a whole lot. So.
Well, they had the Green Orion woman with
Kirk
in the first one, so yeah. I mean, you have to throw them a stop somehow.
Yeah, we got to give them one of those green chicks. The Trekkies will love that.
How about giving one of those chicks from Avatar?
Yeah. Yeah.
No, you wouldn't. You'd have trouble keeping them in the frame because I mean they're 10 feet tall.
Yeah, they'd have to be. Yeah. They'd have to stoop over walking through the ship.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you got an instant joke because every time they walk through a door, they hit their head. Boom, you know.
Yeah. They don't understand technology.
Well, that also explains why most of the characters on Star Trek have to be humanoids of our height, because they wouldn't fit in the ship otherwise.
Right? Yeah. Clearly, these ships were designed for people like us. Like, what if we find aliens that are like 20 feet tall? What are we going to do? I don't know.
Show Kirk scaling one like a mountain or something.
You keep them in the cargo bay, right? So they're in the cargo bay, and that's where you have to visit them, you know?
Yeah. Sorry, guys. It's the only place we can fit you.
And that's the Navi embassy.
Yeah. At least they're too big, so even if like the doors come open accidentally, they won't be sucked out into space. They'll just get stuck. You know?
Yeah. Next generation,
actually, have you seen the video where the crab gets negative or pulled through that little hole because of the water pressure? That's probably what would end up happening in space.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I don't. Their bones would be shattered and they would be pulled out into space. Like, yeah.
I mean, not to be gruesome, but
you know, I don't mind being gruesome. I mean. I would like. You know what Star Trek needs is more gruesome deaths. We need to get Zack Snyder to direct a Star Trek movie so we can get some compound fractures in there. You know, we need to see bones poking through the skin.
Yeah, and Gene Roddenberry doing 3,600 RPM in his grave.
Yeah. I remember watching because I really liked the Watchmen movie, but I remember watching it the first time, and when they have that alley fight, and like Silk Spectre and Night Owl are like punching people in the arm, and their arms are breaking, and like bones are coming out through the skin. I remember watching that and going, Jesus Christ, man! Like, is that really necessary? I guarantee you he had to be talked down from having a shot like that in the Superman movie. I guarantee you some executive had to come in and say, Zach, we can't have Superman punching people's bones out of their arms, okay? But it'll be so cool. No, I'm sorry. We can't do it. Oh, okay. You know, and he's going to keep pitching it. There's going to be a draft of the Justice League script where that's going to be in there. Like this scene where Batman holds a guy by the foot and kicks his leg in half. We don't need that. Oh, okay, the kids will love it. Sorry, Zach.
Far from Nolan. Swear to me.
Not to be off topic.
Go for it, please.
But I just wanted to say it's really weird to be on Google Plus with other people in the room that don't know what the hell's going on. So you randomly talk in places and they can't hear anything.
Yeah. It is funny when people talk over each other and you hear the beginning of somebody and then the end of somebody else. It's like, what? I didn't get any of that.
Well, there are 10 people here now.
Yeah, I think that we have a full room. I think we're full.
Did Christy say something about not being able to make it? It's kind of a shame she's not here.
Yeah, I know. She had a good streak going. She was here for like 5 times in a row. Maybe she couldn't make it. Maybe she got the time mixed up again. I remember one time she came in like in the last 5 minutes, and I was like, oh shit, we're almost done.
It was the first one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
With basically just you and me.
Yeah, that's right. The first one was just me and Henrik holding it down for most of it, and we held it down.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we that one was 60 minutes of movie talk. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we talked about video games a little bit too, or Henrik did. I don't know shit about video games, but
yeah, it was more like an interview.
Yeah. I tell you what, though, even though I don't like video games, or it's not that I don't like them. I like them. I just don't play them very often. Has anybody else discovered the Internet Archive's MS-DOS video game section?
I used to play those games back when it was that DOS.
Me too.
I know it exists. I've seen it online, but I haven't used it or anything.
Oh man.
The one game I would dig up, I may dig up now that I've heard about this. There was a marvelous game that Infocom did called Trinity, and it was basically built around the idea of the point of the main of the game. You have this mid game that is rather like Alice in Wonderland after a fashion. It's very bizarre, it's very weird, but it's the end game that you're aiming at, and the end game of Trinity is the Trinity site in Alamogordo, and the idea is to stop the first nuclear test.
Oh. That's a cool premise for a game.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because the pre-game, the preface of the game has you wandering around these English gardens. I'm trying to remember the name of the garden, but there's this one point where you run into this woman her umbrella has been caught by the wind and it's caught in a tree, but you haven't really quite seen her, and you take a look at her, and to quote it, her face is wrong. Something has distorted her Asian features into a hideous mask. She must have been in an accident or something. No, she wasn't in an accident. She was at Nagasaki.
Ooh.
And you meet her later on. It's wonderful because it's all text-based.
Yeah.
And the descriptions are wonderful. And if you're going to go after any of this stuff, find Trinity. It's an old Infocom game, that and one other which was called A Mind Forever Voyaging. A couple of really, really neat games that will make you paint. I mean, forget the graphics. Your head will paint the pictures for you, and you will have a time in 3/4. I thought they're fabulous.
Yeah, I had the first computer I ever had when I was like 9 years old was a Commodore 64, and I had a couple, more than a couple. I had a bunch of text-based like adventure games for that, and it is really. I mean, when you think about it, video games today are so much about the graphics and about the visual element, which makes sense. But those text-based games were really immersive because if they were written well enough, it would sort of fire your imagination.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, and they were basically interactive books. You know, they were a book that you could sort of travel through.
Exactly.
And, yeah. But yeah, that the MS DOS archive at the Internet Archive is bringing me back to like when I was a kid, because they have the Oregon Trail is on there. Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego is on there. I mean, come on, right? And Wolfenstein 3D.
Oh God.
Wolfenstein 3D.
Well, that was graphic, and that was one of the first graphic games. Yeah.
Yeah. And I cannot tell you how many hours as a child and an early years teenager that I wasted playing Wolfenstein 3D.
I actually ran onto that. One of my customers, in fact, was a guy at Westinghouse. I'm taking care of their system, and come back. I'm doing the paperwork, and what's that? Oh, it's this new game. It's Wolfenstein 3D, and I'm sort of going copy, and of course, and yet another addict. So there you go.
Yeah, and the cool part is like. They're all play with right in your browser. They have an emulator that loads right in your browser, so you can play them just online.
Very cool.
Yeah, and for a few of them, I've tried. The interface isn't all that good. Like the controls are kind of difficult to figure out. But for Wolfenstein, it's really easy. It's just like playing the old game, back in the day. And for the other ones I've tried, it works pretty good. But yeah, it's like a blast from the past. I remember when it just started getting attention a couple of months ago, and they have.
Isn't there a Wolfenstein remake also?
Yeah, I haven't played that. Yeah, there's a much more recent version of it that I.
Yeah, if anybody's played the remake, I want to know what anybody thinks of it. I haven't actually played it myself, but I played the old Wolfenstein.
I've seen it, but I haven't played it. My boyfriend grabbed a copy of the revised one, and the graphics, of course, look a lot better. But I haven't played it myself. But I played the old one.
I played it a little bit, but I felt it was a little bit too generic, to be honest. It didn't have anything special or unique like the old Wolfenstein had.
Yeah, that's what I'd heard, that it was very cookie cutter and kind of didn't live up to its legacy, as it were.
What was the name of that?
A lot of games are like that nowadays.
Yeah.
I think it was just called Wolfenstein. I don't think it had any subtitles or anything. Is that right?
That sounds right. Yeah.
Was that the MS-DOS archive at Internet Archive or something like that?
Yeah.
Okay, because I want to go after that when we're done here.
Yeah, there are a few sites like that. There's a couple of sites that do abandonware, where they just like, hey, this game used to be made by this company that shut down, and you just download them for free. There's probably a dozen of them around.
Yeah, there are a couple of abandonware sites around. But yeah, and it's funny because there are things on the Internet Archive site that I guess the copyright holders must have just let their license lapse or something, because there's there's Batman games, and there's wrestling games, like licensed, WWF wrestling games that I guess they must have just, been allowed to pass into the public domain. So there's all kinds of stuff.
There's another excellent site I would want to bring up to everyone, because there are certain games that have not been abandoned but are still pretty old, and you still kind of have to pay if you want to get them. And if you want those kinds of games, there's a site called GOG, G-O-G, where you can find a lot of like games from like the early 90s or even the late 80s that you can pick them up for like $5.
Stands for Good Old Games, for anyone that's curious.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful site. I picked up dozens of games that are, from my childhood, so I enjoy it.
I actually bought the Legend of Corundia from there a couple of days ago and started playing it. And I have these memories from it. It's these wonderful, extremely beautiful, hand-painted graphics and everything like that. And when you start playing it now and you're like, is this it? Seriously?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's because as an adult, I haven't been as into video games as I was when I was a kid, but there are very few things that will take me back to what it felt like to be a kid than playing video games that I played when I was a kid. Like I have such vivid sense memories of like sitting in my basement and playing my Nintendo. You know, it all comes flooding back when you play these old games.
Yeah, I believe old memories is the best graphics you can have.
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely, because yeah, I mean, if like I used to play, you know, NES games that I know by today's standards, the graphics, most of them are very primitive. But when you think about them in your memory, it's like it's so much more fun and exciting, and you just get warm feelings thinking about them, and you know, and I mean, I guess it's just that I haven't been as engaged with it as a grown up. But the few video games, more recent ones that I've played, haven't really tingled that same feeling in me. You know, I guess I'm too detached from it.
That's probably the main reason that there's such a big resurgence of classic style games, where you know you could find games done in like NES or SNES style that are, you know, games you can buy right now that have just come out, like 2015, and it's like plays like Mario, plays like Zelda, and they're wonderful.
Like Shovel Knight.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Shovel Knight, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, if you go to Steam and look for retro games, you have tons and tons of them. It just never ends.
It's like 50% of my library now.
Well, yeah, and look how popular stuff like 8-bit pixel art has become. You know, like there's a lot of sort of nostalgia for the old look of those old, you know, 8-bit and 16-bit games. I guess because people my age are starting to get old and are thinking, I wish the games were like they were when I was a kid.
They use that in the closed credits of Wall-E.
Yeah. And well, and they just recently did that recreation of the Simpsons opening credits too in like pixel art, or that was really beautiful. Like it was really impressive.
Well, just about all of Minecraft is pixelated like that too.
Yeah. I've never played Minecraft. It's just.
I think you'd like it. I play it.
Yeah,
it's fun.
I know a bunch of people who play it. Yeah.
Well, it's one of those games where it can be as simple or as complex as you want it to be. So, yeah, it's just a lot of fun to play. It's a whole lot of. It's like Legos, but like up a magnitude.
Yeah. I'm afraid if I got into that, I would just then like all my free time would disappear.
That is a concern.
Like
that's a worry.
I have to wonder how much free time you have anyway with your video schedule being limited.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's the thing. I have all this, like I have work, which takes up a lot of time, and is actually spread out pretty far. Like in terms of like the actual video production, that's pretty regimented. I do that only at certain times. But in terms of like writing things, that's pretty much all over the place. You know, like I'm writing something. I'm in the process of writing something now that hopefully I'll get done later today or tomorrow. But like I don't really have a schedule for it. Just whenever I have time for it. You know, so yeah, free time is very is premium. You know.
So Steve, I was interested in asking you.
Yeah.
How far in advance do you plan your productions? I know obviously your You Had to Asks and the dated 5 Stupid Things have to be relatively recent to the day you're doing them. But do you have other things like Good News is that you've done 2 or 3 weeks out that you just sort of have in a file somewhere to put them up?
No, actually, well, the topical 5 Stupid Things, the ones that go up on Wednesday, those are done a couple weeks in advance.
Okay.
But actually the Good News videos are done the day before. They're always pretty recent. I write them and shoot them on Monday, and then they go up on Tuesday. But the 5 Stupid Things, I shoot 3 at a time every other Friday. And the first one is the one that goes up on Monday, the 5 Stupid Things for whatever date, and then the other 2 are topical ones that I sort of put into the queue and are automatically released, you know, every week. But those are the only ones that I shoot really far ahead of time. The other ones are mostly like, You Had to Ask is usually, I've been into a groove where You Had to Ask is usually shot Wednesday night, and then it goes up on Friday. An Atheist Reads, I write on Tuesday and shoot on Wednesday morning, and then it goes up on Thursday. So it depends. And Steven, when I do the Steven Stuffy videos, they're usually written the weekend before, and maybe finished up on Monday and then shot on Tuesday and edited on Wednesday, and then they go up on Thursday. So it depends. But usually, except for the 5 Stupid Things that are done a couple weeks in advance, most of it's not done like super far ahead of time. But I do have them scheduled pretty far out. Like I know I can look at my list and know like which ones I'm doing next, you know.
That actually makes me want to ask another question.
Okay.
Related, because you mentioned the An Atheist Reads series, and I know one of your Patreon goals is to redo all of the An Atheist Reads as, I think, a podcast form or something. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're gonna redo them. You're not just gonna rip it and put it in audio. So.
Right.
Are you going to like reread the books? Or are you going to go over notes and just re-record? How's that going to work?
Yeah, I'm going to go back over my notes, and I still have all the books to refer to if I feel like I need to. But the plan is.
Read the second time, Steve.
Yeah, you lose
Why would you do
IQ
that to
points.
yourself? Yeah.
We might lose him. We might lose him.
Right. I just don't think I can read New Evidence That Demands a Verdict again. That thing is like a doorstop. No, I'm not gonna go back and reread the books entirely, but I am gonna go back through my scripts and sort of polish them up if I feel like they need to, you know, and then re-record them. Just to see if there's anything I could do to make them a little bit more suitable for audio format as opposed to audio-video format. Although I know a lot of people just listen to the videos anyway. The audio or the video portion isn't as important to those videos as they are to some other ones.
I don't know. Sometimes seeing your expression is worth it.
Oh, yeah.
Where you just feel like, oh, really?
Yeah.
Especially on the Ray Comfort one. That was one of the best, some of the best reaction faces you've ever done.
You know, I mean, sometimes people ask me why I don't. People either ask why am I still doing it, because a lot of the books repeat themselves, or why don't I do like more serious stuff, like why don't I handle like something more by a more heavy duty theologian as opposed to these apologists. And the only 2 books that I have personally ever felt, well, 3 books now, because I think God's Not Dead falls into this category, but the only ones that I've ever felt were almost not worth doing. Like the books were so bad and the arguments were so stupid that it was just not even worth addressing. Was The Purpose-Driven Life, which is just drivel, and the Ray Comfort stuff, where it was just like, oh, this is so bad. Like, do I even need to be giving people counter arguments to this? Like,
are you sure they're not all like that, or?
Well, they all are to an extent. Yeah.
Yeah. This is why, and pardon me if I'm bugging you about it, but I still think you need to do seriously To Hell with Christian Apologists or To Hell with Apologetics. I seriously do truly believe you need to do that. And I'll tell you something else. The basis for that is something you did for the places where you outlined, I believe it was like 6 points.
Oh, yeah.
Are the Christian apologetics. That is core to the whole thing. I think you could make a smoking video on that.
Yeah, I probably could. That is a really good idea. I think that's coming at some point. I mean,
I'd love to see it.
I've also
you could let your hair down, or however much hair you've got.
Let my beard down.
That too.
I keep certain ideas like in my back pocket in case I need them for something, and I always thought if I were ever invited to like give a talk somewhere, like at a convention or at a meeting or something, that would be a good topic for a first talk, to just sort of do a much expanded version of that bit that I did on the place with the apologetics. Yeah. And what I've been referencing it as I've gone through the God's Not Dead book, with pointing out the tropes as we hit them. The really, really common basic arguments, like mischaracterizing atheism, or claiming that science is a religion, or misquoting like a famous scientist, or quote mining Albert Einstein. Like there are things that it's almost like every apologist does them, but in God's Not Dead, it's like he's doing all of them. He's not missing a beat. He's doing all of the really, really, cliched arguments. He's hitting it one after another, after another, after another. It's almost like he went through all the other books and said, okay, I'm just not going to do what some of these guys have done before. I'm going to do all of it in this one book.
Yeah, I think my bingo card is just solid black now.
Yeah, I would think so. I said someone left a comment. Someone left a comment on one of the recent videos and said there should be a drinking game, and I said, and I've actually seriously thought of doing like an apologist drinking game video, and I still may do it at some point. But I said I would worry that I would open myself up to liability because people would just start dropping dead. If you read one of these books.
What you do is you do the drinking game mixed with an MST3K, trip on God's Not Dead or some other Kirk Cameron thing, but just hey, work the two together. It'd be perfect.
I'm sure you could do all with water, and
of course the comments would get more fluid as the fluids were flowing. Obviously.
Exactly.
Yeah, have an ambulance on standby, speed dial.
So yeah, it's one of those things where like, okay, I'm shooting my I'm doing a riff tracks of the God's Not Dead movie now, so I just want everybody to know where I am and what I'm doing. So if you don't hear from me, you'll know.
Got a comment over there?
Yeah, Joanna said one of the things you always mention. I need to go to the chat now. The little bubble. One of the things you always mention is that he's always preaching to the choir. I wouldn't be surprised if he's just shoveling out ideological comfort food for believers for a quick buck at this point. Yeah, I think that's probably true. I mean, I don't. The quick buck thing makes it sound like maybe he's intentionally like defrauding people, and I'm very reluctant to say that. I feel like he's probably a true believer, but but as for how well do Ray Comfort books sell, like I have no idea. They must sell well enough for him to keep writing them, but I mean, I can't imagine they're bestsellers. Like
I can't imagine he puts a lot of does he even buy an editor, or I mean, beyond the publishing rights, he doesn't have to spend a lot of money to write them.
That's true. Well, and his last couple of books, Ray, I don't know, I haven't gone back and looked through his entire bibliography, but Comfort's last couple of books have been published by WorldNet Daily, which is not exactly a prestigious publisher. So it's like one step up from WorldNet Daily, exactly.
Yeah, well, you observed in the second book of Comforts that you read that, I mean, didn't he do a cut and paste of like a whole, chunk of a chapter or something? I recall you mentioning that.
Yeah. It was a verbatim. It was a verbatim reprint of something from an earlier book, yeah, or an earlier chapter, yeah. Well, and I think the Evidence That Demands a Verdict book had things like that too, but that was a little different because the way that book is laid out, it's laid out very unusually. It's not written intended to be read like from cover to cover. It's laid out like a lesson plan, which I found a little pretentious, like, but so there's material repeated in that if it's like cross-reference, if it's relevant to this area as well as this area. But yeah, with the Ray Comfort book, it was like he just took the same paragraph and just dropped it in later in the book. So I don't think he had an editor for that one, or if he did, he shouldn't. Whoever the editor was should have been fired.
Yeah. I still have to ask if anybody has ever actually written a Christian or Jewish or Islamic apologist book that was actually aimed at atheists. I mentioned this in a comment, and I'm still dubious. I don't see it.
None of the ones I've read so far would qualify.
No.
I mean,
well, they probably do aim them at atheists. They just don't have any idea how we think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I can understand that if you're still like in the evangelical bubble and you don't really interact with atheists very much. But I mean, for someone like Ray Comfort prides himself on having had all these thousands of conversations with atheists. I mean, Ray has to know that that an atheist does not think of him or herself in the same terms that Ray still continues to say that like an atheist does not think of is not someone who is pretending to not believe in God, which is what Ray still says.
Yeah.
Well, the reason he says that, I think, and it's not so much that he's being dishonest, it's that there's a cognitive dissonance there where he believes that the Bible is 100% true, and the Bible says that that's what atheists do. The Bible says we suppress the truth and unrighteousness, and he says, well, that's what the Bible says, I'm going to go with that. And it's a little insulting because, like, there's an atheist like standing right in front of him going, no, seriously, I'm being honest with you, that's not what we believe. And he's like, whatever, atheist.
Yeah, they live and die on the straw men.
Yeah,
and it's what it is. They I don't know whether they can't deal with real people and a real interaction or what. It's so disingenuous.
Yeah, Henry.
I will get to that type of like Reza Aslan.
Oh God.
I've never read any of Reza Aslan, actually. I've seen him, on TV and stuff, but I've never actually read any of his stuff.
I've listened to the audiobook How to Win a Cosmic War, which it wasn't terrible. He actually answers his premise in one sentence, which is just how to win a cosmic war, don't take part in one. And if you read only that part of the book, that's really the most important part to read. But it wasn't terrible. It was one of the books I read when I was first considering atheism, along with Hitchens and Sam Harris. I picked up Reza Aslan.
Yeah, I mean, and Joanna just also said in the chat that when she was a Christian, she genuinely believed that about atheists too. See, that's why I'm reluctant. I know some people are more willing than I am to say that apologists are faking it, or they're knowingly like defrauding their audience. They're pulling the wool over people's eyes. But I'm very reluctant to say that because I mean people are capable of sincerely believing all kinds of really really dumb shit.
And plus, if you're indoctrinated from a young age, you aren't even going to make that, or take that step, rather. Just sort of question it or test them. Like, is this true? Maybe I should talk to an atheist directly about it, but they don't often take that step to find out.
Yeah, well, exactly, yeah. The worst place to learn about religion is church. And that's where most people learn about it. And the job of a church isn't to teach you to think critically about the claims that the pastor is making. It's to teach you not to accept it. Yeah, exactly. I remember very vividly one of the times I went to church. I've mentioned her a couple of times. I had an ex-girlfriend about 10 or 12 years ago who was Christian, and I went to church with her a few times, and one time I sat in with a Sunday school class with hers, and she didn't go to like a crazy church. Like she was mainline Protestant Methodist, relatively middle of the road in terms of her faith. But I was sitting in on a Sunday school class about, and somehow the subject came up of like other religions, and they started talking about Mormons. And this room full of Christians all of a sudden started making fun of how crazy the Mormon belief system is, which it is. It's completely nuts. But I'm pretty sure I was the only non-Christian in the room, and I remember looking around going, yeah, but what you guys believe is just as crazy. Like, do you not see that from the outside there's really no difference in craziness between mainline Christianity and Mormonism?
But also realize that they think that what we believe is crazy as well.
Oh, sure. So. Sure they do. But I think it's just that notion that you're not taught even in a Sunday school class where you're taught about your faith. You're not taught to consider other points of view or to critically consider your own faith. Yeah. And the thing that really bugs me about it is most pastors who actually have degrees, who have gone to college and been educated in biblical studies or theology or whatever, they know this stuff. Like, they have learned. I mean, they're taught it from an ardently Christian point of view, but still, like, they know about the history of the Bible. They know about comparative religion. Like, they've studied all this stuff, and they pass none of it on to the flock. They give them the message. It's all about messaging. They don't educate them about any of this stuff and say, well, here's what I learned. You make up your own mind. It's okay. We'll just keep that in the background. And
they don't dare, because I mean, you'd instantly have more questions than the average guy could handle.
Yeah. You'd have to do like question time with the pastor every week or something.
It isn't very easy for me to understand like that past that people have had. I mean, I've been an atheist my entire life. I've never been anything else but an atheist, so it's very hard for me to come in at, you know, say like my brother or a pastor or something like that, and really understand where they've come from and why they think how they do. So, because I'm just looking at all these comments on the side where everyone's talking about how they used to believe and then something made them think outside of that little box they were basically put in. And I just go, man, I can't even imagine what it must be like to have to tear yourself away from your religion like that.
Yeah. It's really tough because especially a lot of the side comments are about, you know, reading the Bible and how like Joanna said, when I started to read the Bible, that's when I started to lose my faith. The way you're taught to read the Bible in church is to just accept that it's true, and specifically to accept that your church's interpretation of it is the right way to read it. And when you, it's really tough to get away from that. I mean, if you read the Bible objectively, as though it's any other book, I think it can be a really strong push toward not necessarily atheism, but at least toward, you know, being non-religious. But it's really tough to get into that mindset. You know, if you're raised in a church and you're taught that this is the perfect, you know, infallible Word of God, and you can't you can't be critical of it, and you can't challenge it, and you can't even entertain the idea that it might be wrong. It's really tough to get away from that. I mean, if you can get away from that, then, you know, I think what people say is true. Like reading the Bible can make you an atheist, but you have to get away from that first. Hey, Joe.
Hey, it's going, Steve.
He made it. Joe made it.
I did, finally.
Yes.
How's it going, guys?
It goes.
Yeah, so we've had such a full house today. It's been tough to get in.
Yeah, you know, what you guys were just saying about, you know, people not realizing that, you know, whatever they believe is just as crazy as what they think somebody else's are. Yeah. I was thinking about, like, politics. You know me. I'm fairly politically active, and at times, you know, I've thought about running for office, but what holds me back is that not only, you know, being an atheist, but also the fact that, you know, I have made videos on religion, and there, you know, there's things I've said that people would latch onto and say, oh, he's a bigot, he hates religious people, and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. And the thing is that I could find, and the people that would say that to me are the same ones that wet their pants. You know, whatever. You know, every time says something, you know, doesn't say, you know, Merry Christmas. You know, they're getting into this persecution, and yet they'll say crazy, horrible stuff about Muslims or Jews or whatever, and they don't seem to understand that they are, you know, the stuff they say is 10 times more objectionable to anything that I've said.
Yeah, it's like religious bigotry in the name of a particular religion is okay.
Right.
You know.
Well, that's part of religious privilege, especially Christian privilege.
Yeah.
You know, they figure they've got a fair right because they're in the majority, or certainly a plurality, and therefore, you know, the U.S. is a Christian nation. We have and religious liberty means Christian liberty for all intents and purposes. And boy, getting that one out of the mainstream is going to be tough.
Well, yeah, it's going to take a lot of time. I mean, I think we're moving very, very slowly in a more pluralistic direction, but it's going to take a very long time, you know, and it's going to take, like, it's just getting people, I think getting a lot of Christians, especially a lot of more conservative evangelical Christians, used to the idea that secularism is not a threat to them.
Yeah.
You know, that secularism is actually really good for them because it means they would have the freedom to practice their faith, yes. You know, as long as they don't try to force it on other people, that they can do whatever they want.
That's what's
Yeah,
always
but
baffled me. I mean, if you want a Christian country, which form of Christianity, and how do you know you're going to be
Yeah.
lucky enough that it's going to be yours? You know, secularism, like you said, helps everybody.
Because Catholics and Protestants have historically not liked each other, and if one or the other is in charge, that is not good for the other.
yeah,
No.
and the hell of it is secularism is a threat in that it introduces an idea that they've tried to keep out, that these guys are indoctrinating against. God made the world, Jesus was his only begotten son, blah 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 blah, and the second you allow somebody to think something else, bang, you got doubt, and doubt is intolerable.
Well, the thing is, though, secularism doesn't mean anti-religion. It just means that religion is not in control of things.
Yeah.
Right. And for some people, that is a threat. For some
Okay.
people, that is a threat. Yeah.
Mhm. It
Because
is.
they think that religion has to be in charge of things, or
Yeah.
else nothing will work. But I mean, like to me, I view the secular issue not even like Joe just said. It's not anti-religious. I don't even. I mean, I do happen to be an atheist and also strongly support like a very strongly secular society and secular government. But I mean, if I were a religious person, I would like to think I would feel the same way, because a secular government and a secular society is what guarantees religious freedom, religious plurality. I mean,
Well, the easiest way to make that point to the Protestants is point out that when you're talking plurality, that Catholics have a plurality. So if we were going to pick which version of Christianity based on population, we would probably go with Catholicism, which means that they'd lose and they would not be very happy with that. So secularism protects them from
that.
yeah, we would all be a bunch of papists.
Right.
Our papist government. I always loved that. I always loved that insult, papist. Or in the
It
movie,
sounds such like an epithet.
Yeah.
It does. It does.
Well, it's intended as one, certainly.
Yeah. I love the scene at the beginning of the movie Gangs of New York where they're having the big fight between like the two gangs, and the one gang is like very Irish Catholic, and Daniel Day-Lewis's character Bill the Butcher says he calls them the scourge of them and their Roman popery.
How does he spell potpourri?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, exactly.
Isn't that nice smelling stuff you put in a basket?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
But yeah, something about the Roman potpourri is very offensive to him. But yeah,
It goes in that little basket that's
Probably
on
too many
toilet
rose
bowl
petals.
next to the shelves.
Yeah, you put it in those little bags and you put it into the sock drawer so it doesn't stink. The Roman kind is just real bad, though. You don't want that, apparently. Yeah.
Oh, one thing I just wanted to say real quick, since I wasn't in here at the time, is
Yeah.
I'm glad Lauren was here. He was talking about those old Infocom games. I'm like, cool, another old timer like me who remembers all that stuff.
Yeah, that's in a lot of ways what I cut my teeth on as a kid. There was that. Oh, we can't forget, for those of you who are into alternative sexuality, leather goddesses of Phobos.
Yep.
It was just tongue-in-cheek, pulp comic kind of attitude, which is just a laugh and a half. And Steve, I'll tell you what, as much as you enjoy good writing, it's something you should look into, because you would get a huge kick out of the writing in this stuff. It's some really good stuff.
I have all these games now to look up in the MS-DOS archive.
Well, they also did a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yes, they did.
Ooh, that would be fun.
Yeah.
I've never played that.
See, Steve's love of adventure is why I wish so much that I could convince him to really give an honest try to fantasy RPGs. He's got the
It's probably never going to happen.
He's got the creativity for it. He's got he's got the love of adventure.
But I don't know. It's hard to describe it. It's hard to put it into words. But whenever we get into talking about, I will say with the at this point the only exception being Harry Potter, And I think because Harry Potter is tied very closely to like a more realistic world. But when we I mean, but you know what I mean. Like it's not like long ago and a far off land.
A
It's
galaxy
like,
far, far away, right?
Yeah, but lightsabers and shit. Lightsabers are cool. No, but I don't. I see. But it's weird when you point something like that out, Brett. When you say like, well, what about Star Wars? Like Star Wars and Star Trek are just as divorced from reality.
I don't really make that argument honestly, but just to me, it's all fiction in my opinion.
Yeah. But
if it's well written, you'll like it.
I don't know why. I can't put my finger on it, and I can't articulate it. But when we get into like magic and elves and orcs, and I just go to sleep. I just don't care about any of it.
Well, maybe you'd like a superhero RPG.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, but about the RPGs, I used to know people who were like really into them, and I would see how they would slave over creating their characters. And I would think, God, just write a story. Like my writer's bias, my writer's snobbery kicked in, and I was like, you're putting all this work into like creating this person. Like, write a story. Well, like, what are you gonna do with this?
That's what the gaming really is writing a story. It's as you go.
Yeah, I myself am a DM. I basically run a game of Dungeons and Dragons with my friends. I haven't done it for a while, unfortunately, because I moved. But and that's the kind of things I like to do is to write a story, build a world, make these gods and people. And for me, the draws are not like going in and kicking down a door and murdering people. It's there's racial oppression, there's crime, there's things that you want to take care of. Exactly. You can do the magic.
Political intrigue.
Yeah, you can do the magic and smacking each other with maces if you want, but if you're gonna write a story, write a good story.
The option to smack people with maces is there. I like that.
Fantasy role-playing games and stuff like that is actually about cooperative storytelling.
Oh yeah, if your players cooperate with you, oh my God, it could just be a fan-fucking-tastic experience.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. And there's two different types of games. There's some people who play where the GM and the players are adversarial, which I never thought made any sense because in effect the DM is God. You're impervious. You can't be beaten. So killing off all the characters, it takes no effort. I liken it to beating up.
What kind of story is that? Exactly.
But if you look at it from that collaborative storytelling where the GM is creating situations, and even there the players have some choice as to whether they're going to get involved in X, Y, or Z, and so by basically painting the world that they walk through, it can be very rewarding.
Yeah, I don't know. I've just never been into it. And I'm probably never going to. I'm gonna be an old fart, and the rest of it'll continue to grow in popularity, and the rest of the world will be like totally into role-playing games, and I'll be the one person left who's like, I just don't get it.
Steve, you've got a long distance to go before being an old fart. I am an old fart, so cut yourself some slack, guy.
That's true. I'm only gonna be 35 this year, so. I'm not even middle-aged yet, but
How old are you, Lauren? How old are you, Lauren?
I'm 64, just turned in December.
Oh, okay, yeah, you got a bit on me.
Yeah, I still get a kick out of the old stuff, and as it comes to gaming, I still do.
Well, see, Steve's fortunate though. He's not an old fart, but he's old enough. Like he recognizes things that he relates to things that I can relate to, but he can also relate to like these young folks here.
I do feel like the people who are around my age are kind of like a transitional generation because I remember very, very clearly when phones had wires that connected them to the wall, and when the internet was like not even a thing. Like I remember, the internet almost didn't exist when I was growing up. Like I didn't have an email account until I was like 12 or 13, and so I remember things from before. But I was also young enough when all that stuff happened that it doesn't feel strange to me. Like it feels completely natural to me. So I was young enough to be able to very easily make the adjustment when all of the cool digital stuff started happening. Like my father still talks about computers like farming equipment. You know, like I don't go near it. I don't know how to turn it on. I don't, you know. Well, we've gone slightly over the hour. That's okay. Joe was late. I always like talking to Joe.
Thank you.
And Joe wasn't late. Joe wasn't late on purpose. It was just that there were so many people in here, he couldn't get in. But I guess I'm going to wrap this up because I probably have shit to do.
Yeah, probably.
I'm sure I do. I'm sure I'll.
Well, thanks for having us.
Oh, guys, thank you so much for participating. Thank you for being patrons, first of all, and thank all of you guys who watch, who are also patrons, for supporting this channel with the Patreon campaign. And if you are watching and you're not a patron and you're considering it, that would be great. If you don't want to give me any money, that's okay too. I won't hold it against you. But if you do have the means and the interest, the Patreon campaign is there. I very much appreciate the support, not just from the people in this room, but from everybody who has been kind enough to be a patron of mine. And I love doing these every month. Thank you guys for coming in and joining me on this. Thank you guys for watching. And we'll do this again next month. So, bye, everybody.
Thanks.